This is Coffee Guts, and welcome to Coffee Guts and Philosophy. This podcast is about discussing philosophical questions that I've received from you. Listeners, fans, random people in the street, maybe you are in a barrel and yelled something. I'd like to preface this podcast series by stating that I do not hold a degree in philosophy. My knowledge of philosophy comes from the philosophical courses that I've taken into college, as well as my habitual reading of philosophy. So, simply put, take everything with a grain of salt, and keep in mind this isn't all good fun. However, for academic integrity, I will cite my sources. Before I start, I'd like to mention that I'm going to explain a quick reference of what philosophy is in this episode. So bear in mind, this may sound like a robot reciting stereo instructions to a zombie cat named Dubsy. Hang in there while we dunk our ear holes into a bubble bath of knowledge. What is philosophy? Well, philosophy, in short, is the study of wisdom, or to put it in an easier way, how to apply the scientific method to the acting practice of wisdom. Before we can go any further, I should mention one of the fundamental aspects of philosophy, which is defining your subject matter first, then hammering out the details. Now, some of the things that we're going to focus on here explaining go far more deep and morose than I have time for. I don't want to turn into Chidi from The Good Place, but that is exactly why we study philosophy, and that's why everyone hates us. Anyways, wisdom would be defined as gaining knowledge through experience, such as I burnt my hand after attempting to touch fire. Now I know fire will burn me if I try to touch it. The scientific method would be defined as coming to a conclusion and future predictability by the process of observing a phenomenon, creating a hypothesis regarding its function, creating an experiment to test your hypothesis, drawing a conclusion of knowledge and experience, and then rinse and repeat. But for time's sake, we will discuss the definition of knowledge and experience in another episode, because a priori, a posteriori, and anything else that would be tangibly attached to that as an addendum or useful matter source will take too long. If you want me to discuss that, let me know in the comments below. The innate nature of philosophy is scientific from the antecedent to the consequent, or in other words, from the subjective to the objective. Not to get all GE more there. Take, for example, how you feel around a new friend compared to an old friend. When you're around your new friend, you behave in a different manner, perhaps due to the underlying notion that you don't want to lose a potential friendship, because we are all stuck in our lizard brain survivalistic tribalism, which we have for a reason. Whereas you've already established an understanding with your old friend, so your behaviors need no explanation, nor do theirs, whether they're positive or negative. The relationship with a new friend is based off assumptions or subjective cues you gather while being around them, while the relationship with the old friend is based off objective facts you know about them, so you've already established why and how you should act around them. Getting a real Wittgenstein vibe here, showing and telling. In both scenarios, we observed a phenomenon, created a hypothesis regarding its function, created an experiment to test the hypothesis, and drew a conclusion. However, we can continually apply the concept of philosophy by asking the why and what to do with this knowledge. For example, we're about to go beat a dead horse. goes. Say you are a software programmer and you program the coding for a self-driving car. After going through all the coding and the processes the car would be doing, you realize that there is the possibility of two individuals jumping in front of the self-driving car while it's in motion. You realize you need to program which person the self-driving car hits. For the sake of the argument, we'll say that the self-driving car cannot stop in time and will eventually strike one of the two pedestrians. Which pedestrian will the car hit? The scientific method can conclude that one of the two pedestrians will be hit by the self-driving car, but cannot give you an answer as to which pedestrian should be spared. This type of example is called a trolley problem. Trolley problems are the equivalent of beating a dead horse repeatedly over and over again, appearing as it is useful. You get nothing out of the experience except learning what your opinions are on the matter. Seeing that trolley problems are overkill is kind of an understatement. The benefit of it is finding which environmental content it is useful in. What is the worst case scenario? What is the best case scenario? Now, we've got your brain noodle pondering a way I meant to do that. Just seeing if you're paying attention. We will move on to basic argumentation. The classic modes of argumentation are referred to as modus ponens and modus tollens, or simply put, the way of affirming or the way of denying. You're either arguing why it is correct or incorrect. The way in which one goes about these modes is typically done in two different styles. The first style of basic argumentation is from our homeboy, Aristotle. Aristotle created a formula of argumentation referred to as rhetoric, which is broken down into three elements of argumentation: ethos, pathos, and logos. Ethos is the ethical appeal, pathos is the emotional appeal, and logos is the logical appeal. Or simply put, to have a convincing argument, you need to cite ethical and factual evidence while appealing to the passion of the argument. Rhetoric is a style of argumentation that is meant to persuade large audiences, or, if you have a short amount of time, to make a decision. Shatner. Think of this as what political officials use while running for election. You don't have a lot of time, there's a large crowd. What is your stance? Why? How? What? Who? The second style of basic argumentation is from homeboy Zeno of Elea. Zeno's formula for the argumentation is referred to as dialectics. The best way to understand dialectics is to discuss what's referred to as the Socratic method. I know it seems confusing, but trust me. The Socratic method is the style in which we've been exposed to while we're in school. Think about when you first started getting your first pimples, weird hormones, feelings you didn't really get. Why do you like Timmy? Anyways, around this time you were introduced to algebra. Yeah, I know. Anyways, unless you're a super genius, which if you're a super genius, you wouldn't be watching this video because you realize that I am an idiot. I'm sure you struggle with understanding the math concepts. Think about how your teacher taught you algebra, or how you were taught really anything. Your teacher would ask you what your current thought process was, then you state what you understood so far. Then your teacher would ask you to elaborate on understanding what you did understand, so on and so forth. Not to turn to Zizek here. until you logically worked your way through the problem. In short, it's the way of conducting the scientific method to finding a factual answer. Think of it like this. You and your friend are deciding what a chair is. It's the first time you've seen a chair. You have no idea what it is, so you and your friends go back and forth. I agree it's this size based on the dimensions that I've observed that I can test. They say, well, I'll agree, but to this extent. Back and forth until you're building. Think of it as deductive and inductive reasoning to process new evidence or to discard it. Well, my fellow copycat enthusiasts, that's a brief solicited breakdown of what philosophy is. If you're still with me and awake, I applaud you. If you fell asleep, I don't blame you. If this is your 5th time listening to this, you may be heavily distracted due to your high intake of caffeine. Probably from coffee. If that's the case, remind yourself that one must imagine Sisyphus happy and take another sip. This is Copycat signing off. Stay rad. And for questions, if you would like me to discuss something, you can email me at copycatsandphilosophy@outlook.com. You can drop a comment. You can send me a letter. You can throw a note you've wadded into a ball in my direction. Or you can telepathically send me it with your mind bullet brains. Anyways, thanks for joining me. And I'll be awkward some other time.